Okay, for more on the impeachment inquiry, we're joined by Dr. Charles Zelden. He's a professor in the Department of History and Political Science at Nova Southeastern University. Thanks a lot for being here.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, what about the prospect of President Trump answering giving written answers to questions in this inquiry? Could that hurt or help him?
Depends, unfortunately. If he does it, and I don't think he will, but if he does it, he'll want to do it after everyone else has testified, so he knows what all their stories are, at which point he will come up with answers that his lawyers will make appropriately worded. The problem he has is if he testifies here, he also has to be in compliance with the testimony he gave to the Mueller investigation. And that creates problems because there may be things that he needs to say here to get himself off that puts him in trouble of having lied on his earlier testimony. So I suspect he's going to follow his lawyer's advice and say nothing.
So far, the president's allies in Congress have made this an argument over the process. But now the White House is reportedly urging them to also argue the substance of the president's claims. Is that a good idea?
No. It isn't, because the problem is this. The reason they're arguing process is because the substance isn't good. If you want to argue substance, you have to begin by the fact that he acted in ways against U.S. policy that he himself had signed off on, that he acted in manners that went against procedures, and that essentially he was doing some sort of self-dealing. Now, as president, he can change policy, but the way he went about changing policy is at best inappropriate, which means that you have to start with the president made a mistake, the president acted inappropriately, and then you can say, but that's not grounds for impeachment. But without saying that first part, simply saying it's not grounds for impeachment doesn't work.
Well, do you think that the narrative we've heard so far from the witnesses leads to possible level of impeachment?
Well, what we've heard so far is that there was a policy set by Congress, signed off on by the president, implemented through the State Department, and the president chose not to follow it. That he created a shadow foreign policy with aims that seem to be self-serving. What we'll see this week are people who can testify to what he said, and in the case of the individual from who was
at the restaurant?
Yes,
and
at the
heard
restaurant.
The conversation?
Yes, thank you. Who heard the conversation? That ultimately he can testify that the president was involved in making this policy happen. So last week was all about laying the groundwork. This week is about what the president said and did. And that can be really bad for the president.
Okay, so we have new poll data. 70% of Americans believe the president's actions with regard to Ukraine are wrong. 51% say he deserves to be impeached and removed from office. 25% say he did nothing wrong. If you're looking at this through a historical lens of presidents being impeached, what are the chances he emerges unscathed?
I still say that it depends how you define it, unscathed. If unscathed means he stays as president, still a good chance of that. These numbers aren't high enough yet to get the Senate Republicans to vote impeachment, to convict. When you start seeing Republicans at 35, 45%, he's guilty, then you might see a change. But right now, it's like 5 or 10% at most of Republicans think that anything's even wrong. Rather, what's likely to happen with these numbers is it says there are a lot of people who think what he's doing is inappropriate, and that will be remembered come the 2020 election. So I still think the ultimate test and consequence for the president will come through the electoral process and not through removal from office. But these numbers can change, as they have already.
No matter which side you fall on this, there's no doubt that we're witnessing history. We're going to see more of it tomorrow.
Most definitely.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Charles Zelden from Nova Southeastern University. Okay. And a reminder, CBS News will bring you complete coverage of this week's public testimony in the impeachment inquiry. Nora O'Donnell will anchor our special report from Washington tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday.